Happy Thursday, Internet. Happy Thursday, everyone. And once again, I'd like you to give a warm welcome to James.
Hello there, this is James Escroft, Jersey 1978.
And Dr. Smith.
Hello.
And basically, tonight, the article linked in the description concerns the idiot Michael Gove. To anyone who doesn't know, he is the British Secretary of State for Education, and what he's proposing now is that if school kids are disrespectful to teachers, then their parents ought to be punished. James, your thoughts?
I'm not bigoted, but doesn't everyone wish that it was 1953? Throwback politician appealing to I'm not bigoted, but bring back national service. What are all these foreigners doing in our country? Oh, wasn't it so much better when we could smack our kids? No. It's not even, they're calling it proposals. It was a speech. It's what Josh, the other guest tonight, referred to as peacocking before we started recording. This is just posturing and bluster. I'm not sure if the internet service providers here in Britain ever did block pornography. But unless we specifically opted into the service. But that was something else that David Cameron promised last year in the desperate hope to win votes by playing to the audience. But no. And yes, addressing the whole question of disrespectful children. Define disrespectful. Disrespectful having an opinion, disrespectful refusing to be bullied. There was a wonderful little joke on Facebook. Dad, can you pick me up from school? I've been suspended. Why? What happened? My teacher pointed a ruler at me and said, at the end of this ruler is an idiot. So I said, which end? In Britain, in America, across most of the Western world and Asia, with the exception of Scandinavia, particularly Finland, the education system is assumed to be in collapse. Is assumed to be in decay because children are rebelling, children are answering back, children are refusing to conform. They're thinking for themselves. In the age of the internet, in an age of intellectual independence, where they can have friendships with people all over the world, find out things for themselves, etc., countries like Finland, which have had this education system for decades, realise that yes, independence learning, allowing children to learn what they want to learn, as opposed to sitting them down and regimenting them, demanding obedience. One video I saw a short while ago described our current education system as a mirror of our employment system. You take a child full of wonder and an eagerness to learn the world about the world around them, full of inspiration and hope for the future, and you crush their souls by regimenting them and teaching them what they need to know and no more, and then you send them into the factories. Albert Einstein, the greatest example of a genius crushed by education. So, as I say, it works in Finland, but as I said before, this is just an appeal to the past when the problem is that we are moving into the future. At this moment, we are in what I describe as the adolescence of humanity. The old days of authority and obedience and what have you are slowly passing into the history books. People are becoming more independent. Teenagers especially are becoming more independent. People are thinking for themselves, but we don't know what we want yet. We're trapped between two ideas, what the world used to be and what the world could be. And people like Michael Gove are screaming, yes, let's take it back to the good old days with caning and punishing the parents. And, yes, bring back hanging.
Yes, well, I've definitely heard... Sorry.
Go ahead.
I've definitely heard good things, including from you, about the Scandinavian education systems and the Finnish education system. Yes, a British school is halfway to being a Borstal in comparison, I think.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, you were telling me something about that they're basically given iPads and they learn about what they want to learn about. They've got a lot of freedom in the classroom.
Oh, yes. In Finland, you don't even start school until you're 7, if I remember correctly. And then you start off in what's called a forestry school. Or is that the correct term? Excuse me. Perhaps someone who knows more about this can correct me in the comments.
In the comment section?
In the comment section.
Any Finnish people out there?
But yes, the idea is exploration, learning through play. And the iPad thing that I was talking about before was an advert I've seen for American schools, funnily enough. But again, that's the thing. The idea of independent learning, etc. It's been it is the basis of Finnish education. But the world is changing. As much as people like Michael Gove struggle to keep it the same or to drag it back, teachers especially are realising that yes, independent learning through technology is the solution. Individual schools, individual school districts, individual states taking up parts of the Finnish model. So
yeah. I think from what I can remember, school in the UK is still a bit militaristic. It's still a bit standing in a line. It's still a bit marshal them through the doors, stand up, sit down. It is very kind of very must obey orders.
Yes, nowhere near as much as countries like Japan or Korea, but
no.
Yeah, but still, and again, Finland beats. The assumption is that yes, countries like Japan, Korea, China would have the greatest education in the world because of this regimentation, because of this blind obedience and respect for authority. No, Finland tops the charts every single time in every possible respect. They also have the lowest number of student suicides, student violence, student shootings, drug addiction, because they're not under crippling pressure. Right.
And you would think that people would look at facts like that when they think about how to marshal these things.
No, it's we like to pretend that we are rational, but we are, in so many cases, we are so blinded by our bigotries, by our prejudices. No, we like regimented children.
It's one of those things that works on paper.
Yeah.
Like, capital punishment works on paper. For example, as a deterrent, you would think, but actually look at the statistics, it doesn't work.
No.
But any case, before I go too off topic, finally, it's your turn, Dr. Smith, your take on this.
Just to be clear, I want to make sure this is talking about punishing parents for their
Oh
kids.
yes, but
Wait a minute. For their kids acting up in school or in general?
In school, if they disrespect a teacher.
It's a touchy subject, and the only thing I can really say in regards to it is growing up in the Midwest and seeing how some of the teachers treated us in the 80s. You'd get to a point where you would talk back. And so on one hand, I would say no, a parent shouldn't necessarily be punished. However, the flip to this is, in this day and age, I've seen a lack of respect from a lot of juvenile kids in this day and age, being that I worked as a mall security guard for close to 4 years at a fairly busy mall. And I could remember specifically not being mean or nice, just being firm and asking kids to move along where they weren't supposed to stand, blocking the ways for customers at the mall or whatnot. And I would see these things that some of these kids would do that would just blow your mind. I can remember specifically, I don't know how graphic I can get on your show. Am I free reign?
Yeah, go.
Okay, I specifically remember getting a call from one of the stores that had a camera to watch for loss prevention. They'd shot it out into the mall just to see who was coming up to the store. There was a soft seating in front of the store, and a young kid was catcalling. You couldn't hear him, but you could see him catcalling at girls. Gets up, whips his Johnson out, starts shaking it at her. Then he gets on the couch and he starts humping it. Now, at that point, the loss prevention guy who was filming this had gone and called my boss and the other security officer that was on duty with him. They walked over, got the kids, took them over to the store, to the back room where their loss prevention is. The mom shows up to pick these two kids up, and she's like, not my kid. My kid wouldn't do this. They throw the videotape in, and the mom had to, eat her words in a sense. Now, where I'm going with all this is that I think it's a case-by-case incident. I think there's some parents that could give two shits about their kids. They don't care. I saw it for close to 4 or 5 years where mom and dad would drop little Johnny and little Susie off at the mall, and they'd tell them, we'll pick you up at 9 o'clock, or they would tell them, you're going to need to get a ride home from Bobby and Mary Sue or whoever. And these kids were left to fend for themselves, and you could just tell, watching them, that mom and dad hasn't shown them any respect or taught them how to show them any respect to other people. They're just running around, being obnoxious, being rude, not so much as even caring about, am I offending anybody to my left or to my right? That's not to say that all kids are that way. So I guess to respond to your whole thing, I think it would have to boil down to what's going on at home. Are the parents really making an effort to raise their kids? And in fairness to the parents in this day and age, it's just not so easy to where mom can stay at home and raise the kids while dad's at work doing 9 to 5.
Exactly, Josh. And this was the point I was making, that at the moment we are caught between two realities, two ways of life, two cultures. The past where mum used to stay at home, dad would work, etc. Children were regarded as property. Now both parents are working, or just one parent working, or what have you. Children pretty much left to raise themselves. Independence, but not knowing, not understanding what comes with. More independent, but not understanding what comes with independence. So, yes, people like Michael Gove and so many people across the world are screaming, pull us backwards, take us backwards. No, that is not the solution. As much as we like to pretend that the world was better back then, it simply wasn't. We've got to try and find a new way to live, to raise our kids.
Growing up, I come from a broken family where my stepdad had a drinking problem. My mom had issues. She still does to this day.
Yeah.
You know, I ended up moving in with my dad later on in life and my stepmom, and that wasn't better, but it wasn't worse. But I remember our family going to counseling for a while. And I've always thought of, we went to this Catholic priest who was supposed to counsel us, and it was just a train wreck to begin with. My mom raised us Baptists, and here we were going and getting counseling from a Catholic person, which to me was just weird because my mom was very aghast with other religions. She was always, this is the right way, they're all wrong, and I always was more on the, can't we all just get along and have different opinions? You know, you know, at the end of the day, we're all trying to get to heaven. You know, back then I felt that way. But the guy made this excellent point. He was talking about spanking us in terms of, like, my mom had brought it up in a conversation. And we were all so belittled, it was me, my brother, and my sister, to really respond to whether we disagreed with it, because we felt like we'd go home and we'd never hear the end of it from my mom. We're like, oh, yeah, it's okay. But truly, we didn't. And the reason I'm bringing this up is James kind of was talking about the old days. I don't necessarily think, you know, beating a kid's ass is always the solution. I'm not going to say it's right or wrong, but I think that, you know, having a heavy hand all the time is definitely not going to win your kids over or their respect for you.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I think that from what I've seen, again, you know, as being a mall security guard, it just seemed like this generation that was raising this next generation coming up, they're frequently broken homes. You know, you have teen pregnancy, which led to, you know, having kids. I called it the instant oatmeal relationship, where you'd have a guy and a girl that thought they liked each other in high school. They got together. She got pregnant really quick. But then, you know, after about a year or two, they realized this isn't working. Now mom's got the kid. That's typically in America how it is. And dad, you know, is kind of like moved on. And so now mom is, you know, trying to find that guy. The big ball of wax here is that, you know, you've got broken relationships, not just necessarily with husbands and wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, but kids and families. It's just, it's really hard to weed through. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer for how. I don't think he's necessarily going about it right. By punishing the parents for anything the kid does wrong in school. You know, you can't always be accountable for your children.
Well, you said judge by a case-by-case basis. I mean, so some of the time it's the parents' fault to some extent. If we take the example you gave of the kids who did, well, let's face it, if an adult male behaved that way, that would definitely be a very serious criminal issue.
Absolutely.
And we've talked a lot recently about this kind of thing. If a man or if a young man behaves that way in a college or something, and in this instance, if it were up to you to fine that mother, say, $50, $100, would you think of that as a possible solution?
Again, that's a really tough call. I think it would have to depend on the circumstances. I think, you know, taking money away from somebody that might be a single parent and is really struggling and is working hard and is able to be there for a kid is not really fixing the problem. It's making
the government we have right now wouldn't understand that. If anything, I kind of think part of it is to rob the poor a bit more. But sorry, carry on.
No, all right. I don't know if there's such an easy fix. I think there needs to be maybe something. I don't know. I mean, is there some way where you could put the kid and the mom together and see what's going on? You know, if this is a repeated problem where Johnny is having outbursts in school and just doing stuff to be a pain in the ass. You know, because just fining just seems like a bandage over the problem, not really fixing the problem. And I say that very loosely and sarcastically.
Yeah. You, James, any response?
Yes. basically, it comes down to the attitude what Alex and I were talking about before the recording break. You'd think that facts would have some part to play in this. No, whether it's children, whether it's crime, no, regardless of the specific situation, our first instinct is always to punish. And no, the statistics prove, studies prove conclusively, spanking doesn't work. Death penalty as a deterrent does not work. Imprisonment as a deterrent does not work. I do remember studying statistics during part of my law course a few years ago. The statistics related to the death penalty. The only way that something like the death penalty actually works is if it's for minor crimes like shoplifting or looting during a natural disaster. Police in cities like Los Angeles during an earthquake have been given, under martial law, being given the authority to shoot looters dead without trial. That's the only time when capital punishment actually works as a deterrent. When the punishment should fit the crime. No, when you are murdering people for nicking running shoes, that's when it works. But
James, you bringing that up made me think, though, of what I kind of went into another subject, and I had a point I was trying to make earlier, which was when we were sitting around doing this counseling, the priest brought up, that he didn't think it was right to spank, and he'd brought up the old scripture, "Spare the rod and spoil the child." And my mom's interpretation was that you should beat a kid's ass when they're acting up, and he didn't take it that way at all. It was more of a giving a more civil punishment when kids are acting up and knowing when to reward kids when they're behaving right.
Yeah, so again, spare the rod and spoil the child. It's the joys of the English language. But But basically, the main point you were making is the point you were making there towards the end. Can we actually try and deal with the underlying problem? How is fining or otherwise punishing parents going to help anyone? It doesn't help. It makes us feel better. And also, yes. Child pregnancy and drug abuse and child rape and disobedient children and children murdering other children. None of that ever happened before the wishy-washy lefty liberal socialist pinko commie Jew fags ever came into power. Full fucking shit. In the study of things like the death penalty in Britain before it was finally abolished, oh God, one child who was hanged when he was 13 for murdering a 10-year-old boy to steal the money he was collecting for charity. Long before the Jamie Bulger atrocity, there were other children who murdered children just because they wanted to and because they could. Child pregnancy in Victoria, and children out of wedlock, etc. In Victorian London, the police were so sick of dead babies being dumped. Baby was born, but it was incest. It was a child pregnancy. It was out of wedlock, etc., etc., etc. So they just killed the baby and dumped them by the river. They were so sick of this happening. There was such an outrage that they stationed an officer near the bridge to try and stop it. But after one night, there were so many people in the prison cells. There were so many dead babies that they had to stop. Because it was taking up all of their resources. Yes, we were talking earlier this evening, Alex, about the film, the book, The Portrait of Dorian Gray. and also the hypocrisy of Victorian society. One quote, I can't remember if it was a quote, I do remember someone saying about Victorian society, this is paraphrasing because I barely remember it, Victorian England was personified by a perfectly neat, prim and proper parlour, drawing room, where tea is served precisely at 4 o'clock and everyone minds their P's and Q's, while at the same time there is an opium ring and child prostitution ring in the bedroom. Yes, this idea that the good old days were any better is wrong on every possible level. At the absolute best, we used to beat children into submission, and they were so until to the point where they were so terrified of answering back. That was how the school system used to work. That is how parenting used to work. So yes, unruly kids, etc., etc., etc. And yes, we need to find new ways, but as Josh himself has stated, we have to try and fix the underlying problems rather than just making a speech saying that we're going to punish the parents because it sounds good, because it will win votes from the yes, bring back National Service Brigade.
Aha. And Josh, do you have any final thoughts?
I think James and I pretty much are on the same page agreeing with this. There's got to be a better way to do it than fining parents for this. Yeah. If it were a parent that you just knew that was totally out of the picture and little Johnny and Susie really needed their mom and dad, I would say absolutely. But it's not always so simple as that when mom and dad are struggling and just trying to take care of their kids, and they can't always be present there.
Exactly. Oh, so you're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to work 2 jobs, desperately trying to keep your children alive, keep food on the table, and because they resent you for not being there, they're acting out at school and calling the teacher a blank, blank, blankety blank, so which we're going to fine you, we're going to take the money that you need to buy your children new clothes, new shoes, etc., and then the school is going to call child services and take the children away from you because you can't look after them properly. Problem solved!
Yeah.
And on that bombshell, could we have a good night from James?
May the blessings of the great holy donkey be upon you all.
And a good night from Dr. Smith.
Take care, everyone.
And it's good night from me.